Okay, so let's make a start, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 joint meeting between the Civil Society of Australia ACT branch and the Canberra Data Scientist Group. I want to start off by acknowledging on behalf of both societies the traditional custodians of country, in our case, the Ngambri and Ngunnawal people, and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples present today. So welcome everyone, my name is Francis, I'm the current interim president for the SSA ACT branch. How we're going to run through today is I'll sort of give a general introduction, a bit of housekeeping, and then I'll pass it over to Yan Chang, who heads up the Canberra Data Scientist Group, and he's going to introduce today's speaker, Edward Kang, as well as chair the lecture today. So in terms of housekeeping, for all those who are joining online, please ensure you mute your audio so that there's no interruptions or feedback along the way. We're going to leave all questions until the end of the talk, and so if you are online at the end of the talk, you can raise your hand. Well, I guess you probably just put your question in the chat, and if you're attending in person, obviously you can raise your hand. We'll try to repeat the question so that everybody, both in person and online, can hear the question. So so that's it. Also, the meeting is being recorded, and we will make it available to the public, the general public, afterwards. So the only other thing I want to say is just a little introduction about the Stats Society of Australia, so you can sort of see the banner outside. We're the national body that represents statisticians from all across the country. If you want to know more about the various events, workshops, talks like this one, as well as conferences that are occurring both within the ACT as well as nationally, you can visit www.statsoc.org.au. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Yan Chang, who's going to introduce the speaker and chair today's seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yan Chang. I'm a research scientist with Services One Seattle. I'm one of the organizers of the Canberra Data Scientist Meetup Group, and a few other, I'm also involved in a few other communities. So today's event is a joint event with the Statistical Society, the Canberra branch, and the Canberra Data Scientist Meetup Group, as well as HPE ACT section and the APS AIML community of the APS Data Professional Network. So you may see, our colleagues or from different communities. Okay, first I would like to thank Statistical Society for co-organizing the event, for putting the values and also set up all those events, those kind of things. And also would like to thank our sponsor, Sure, who provide nice food, after the event. Please stay here. It will be delivered at around 6:15 or something around that. We will have nice pizzas and drinks, at the back of the room. Okay. Today we have our speaker, Mr. Edward Kang, who is a lead data scientist with Australian Passport Office. He has over 15 years of hands-on experience in data science and advanced analytical roles. Actually, Edward and myself, we almost became, colleagues, back at immigration at that time. He was there, but I think, upon he left, I joined. Maybe I took his position at that time. Right?
So glad to over.
Okay. Edward has a very rich experience in data science, mobile development, and in AI as well. And he has developed Australia's first machine learning-based passenger screening model, piloted at the Department of Immigration and Citizenship. And also Australia's first machine learning-based sea cargo screening model at Australian Customs, as well as the first machine learning-based individualized marketing offer models at Vodacom. That's what I'm in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Edward has experience working with other large corporate enterprises in telecom and in energy industry in Australia. And as I said, he's now the lead data scientist with the Passport Office. Okay, please join me to welcome Edward for coming to give us.
Thank you. Thanks. Such very kind, Yan Chang. Good evening, everyone. It's really lovely meeting you. Yes, my name is Edward Kang. I work at the Australian Passport Office. It's actually an agency within the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And it's also the issuing authority of Australian passports. And my job as a data scientist, actually, I'm the owner and the author of the forecasting model, which I'll be talking to you today about. I'll just quickly explain something about the model being official. At the Australian Passport Office, we are funded by number of passports that we produce. So for the Department of Finance to hand us the money, we have to tell them we expect to produce this many passports for the next 3 years. And that's where the forecasts come in. So having an accurate and reliable forecast is something that we need to deliver so that the finance can be satisfied that we are not making up the numbers. Okay, so let's start by setting the scene with these questions. Why do we need to forecast demand at the Passport Office? Not many people actually realize this, but passport actually is a revenue generator. So at the moment, I think the passport fee is the $400 for the adult passport and $200 for children. And we issue about 2.5 million passports a year. So you can see we are generating about $1 billion every year. It's not sure about you, but it's a lot of money for me. So having a good forecast means that we'll have a good financial planning, the budget model, and things like that. And if you apply for a passport, you probably remember that you had to attend either post office or passport office for an interview. This actually is a requirement. This is to ensure that you are who you say you are, and you can compare your face to the photo. So by having someone coming into the office, we have to make sure that there's enough room for the waiting area, and there's enough counters, and there are enough people to man the counters. So by having a volume of the foot traffic that's going to come through, we can have a better management in the aspect of the real estate and the safety and security of everyone involved. Okay, passport processing. This might come as a surprise to you, but it's a lot more manual than you think. So we hire about 1,000 employees. And with that many staff, it's always good to have a knowledge of the workload that's coming your way. So having a good forecast will help with good workforce management. And passport is actually a physical book. It's got about 30, 40 pages. It's got a biodata page made of polycarbonate plastic. It's got the laser engraving, laser perforation, all the security features, and the printings. So it's actually a manufacturing process. So anything to do with the manufacturing, you require good stock management and the machinery maintenance, things like that. So having a good forecast will help manage these processes. And lastly, about 90% of our customers opting to receive their passports by mail. So what this means is the Australia Post will have to know the volume that they need to handle because there's a limited number of depots they have. There's a maximum capacity for their sorting facilities. I mean, there are so many vehicles to deliver, and so many drivers. So having this information in advance will help them have the logistics plan well and truly notched out. So this kind of summarizes our business and why we need the forecasting. So let's talk about the forecast now. So when you do the forecasting, it's always useful to have a solid understanding of your business context. So we start with our product. Passport is actually a type of travel document. And as the name suggests, its primary purpose is for you to travel overseas. That's why it has the pages for the visas and the arrival departure stamps. Now, when you carry the passport, the immigration officials in the receiving country will use that to assess whether they'll let you into their country or not. So which means they need to know who you are and where you come from. And because of this reason, passport is also accepted as a primary form of identification. And that's actually a byproduct of this purpose. So primary purpose is for traveling. The last function, which people don't normally appreciate, is you actually have to have a passport to come back home. This becomes more critical actually when you have to evacuate the country during the crisis. So what I'm trying to say here is that our business is all about international movement of people. So let's talk about the people, our customers. Now we have people who's applying for passport for a non-travel related purpose, like mainly as a form of ID. One good example is the state authorities, like child protection agencies. When they have a children in the foster care, they have to identify those kids. And Australia doesn't have a national ID card, and these kids can't drive, so they don't have a driver's license. So they use passport to confirm these kids are who they are. But other than that, majority of the people get the passport because they want to travel. And at any given point of time, what you see is that 7 out of 10 Australians, that's Australian citizens, would have an active passport. You might have that at home, somewhere in your drawer, safe, in your pocket, you know. So that's actually a big coverage of the population. In the last 10 or so years, what we're noticing is more and more children are getting passports. They now make up about quarter to a third of our caseload. And also the seniors, more and more of them are getting passports as well. So what this means is we can't target certain segment of the population for the forecasting. We have to cover entire population. And that means we have to also cover the range of demographics that comes with it. But this all needs to be done in the context of international travel. Okay, so in passport office, forecasting is all about traveler behavior. And when people travel, they always travel for a reason. Could be the holiday, could be the family gathering, you know, could be the marriage, jobs. Yes, there has to be a driver for this behavior. And also at the same time, there are things that can affect them from traveling or encourage them to travel. Now, all this information about the behavior is captured in our database since 2000 in a digital form. So that's 2 decades worth of data. And when I add a bit of mathematics into it, I can train the model. And once the forecast model is developed, we deploy them and monitor and evaluate its performance, which gets fed back into the training. So it's a typical machine learning cycle, and that's what we used. Now, where I started is right at the top. I tried to start by identifying what factors there are that influence the behavior. And I used the same data that I used for the training the model. And that's what we're gonna go through. So this graph is the number of passport applications by the calendar year. So on the left-hand side, it's year 2000. What you see there is we had about 1.2 million applications. On the far right-hand side, after about 2 decades, the number doubled to about 2 million in 2018. In this simple trend graph, it's actually telling us a lot about our travelers. So if you look at this point in the graph, what you see is 2004, there's a sudden jump in the number of applications. It's quite interesting because it follows from the several years of declining trend. And it's not just a spike, actually it jumped up and then it stayed going up, you know, increasing. So in a normal, like a trend graph, you don't normally see this. And when you see this, it's normally either you have a missing data or there's a disruptor in the market. So in our case, it was a disruptor. So if you've been around at the time, what you remember is that was the first year when the budget airline flew overseas from Australia. We had the budget airlines before, but they always serviced domestic routes. Now, with Richard Branson's Virgin Blue, it started to fly overseas. Qantas saw that it was popular, so launched the Jetstar Asia, and the Jetstar, who used to service domestic, has started to fly overseas as well. And this all happened when there was a mining boom. So people had money, there's a cheaper ways to go overseas. So it's natural that people started holidaying overseas. It's actually quite a significant moment because it set a new paradigm for the Australian travelers, and that trend is continuing to this day. There's something else in this graph that's actually telling us that's probably more interesting for forecasting purpose. So in 2012, what you see there is that there's a dip in the demand. So we still had the budget airline, we still had the discounted airfares. The Australian dollar was still good, it was still in the mining boom, and the exchange rates were good and the interest rates were low. So there's no reason why we should see this, but it happened. I actually spent quite a bit of time trying to, find out what's going on. And actually the answer was in the data. So if you look at 2002, there was another dip in the demand. And the interval between the two events are 10 years. And that was same as the validity of passports. But this was actually a bit of a eureka moment for me. But so this is when I thought, oh, there must be something in the way people renew their passports that's driving the demand. So I did a deep dive analysis into customer segments. So the high tenure clients here in blue are the people who renew their passports about the time it expires or just after. So which means they prefer to have their passports valid. And there's a low tenure client in green. They're the people who let their passport run out, and then apply when they need to travel again. And then there's a new client. So they're the first time applicants. Normally they're children or they're the migrants who obtain the Australian citizenship. So what you see here is the numbers for new clients and the low tenure clients. They remain nevertheless steady across the time. Whereas the high tenure clients, they're growing both in numbers and proportion. So it's quite clear that it's the renewal clients that's driving our demand. So what this means is if you can track how many passports are expiring, we can forecast the demand. All right, with this background, we move into the mathematical side. Now, the renewal is driving the demand. That means the passport expiry becomes the precursor. So when you have a precursor, you can turn that into a variable. Yes? And so what we discovered is that there is a linear correlation between demand and expiry. It's a univariate linear function, right? Simple. You can't get simpler than this, right? But we are in the real world. And the most challenging aspect of the real world is that we have to deal with people. For example, families usually travel, during school holidays for obvious reasons. But some families, they start traveling when their kids are really young, whereas others wait until their kids are old enough to look after themselves. But some families stop traveling when their kids are in their teens because, well, they're teenagers, right? It's not cool to travel with parents, yes? Yeah, they're all different, right? Some people like summer, some people like winter, some people like traveling in the peak time so that they can mingle with other holiday makers, make new friends, and go to party, Whereas people like me, I travel when no one else is traveling, so I can go to the museum without joining a long queue. So what I did is I converted these features of behavior into variables. So the model now becomes the multivariate linear function. But a bit more complicated, but still easy enough, right? Wait, there's more, yes. You have to remember that we are dealing with the travelers, right? That's the business context. Now, when you travel, I'm sure all of you have that experience, you're subject to things that's completely outside of your control. For example, like when you're trying to go to some country, you're planning for your holiday, then they suddenly come up with this new visa requirement. They increase the tax, introduce the new fee, so you don't feel like traveling anymore. And the opposite can happen too. When you weren't even thinking of traveling, then you get this email from some travel industry marketer saying, I will give you, half price airfares. Then suddenly you get motivated, And also there are things like international crisis, war, terrorist, earthquake, tsunami. Those things tend always get in your way, make you change plans. All of these things are in random in nature, and they can happen anytime with very short notice. And we have no idea how long this effect lasts. So what this means is some of the variables we created become time dependent. So how do I deal with this? There are many ways you can do this. You can do it in a mathematical form, but what I chose to do is, being a data scientist, I tried to use the tiered sampling for the training set. Because I'm dealing with the time-dependent variables, the way I stage the tiered sample is by timeline. So what I mean is, when I select a test set, the training set will only come from the period immediately preceding the test set. So if I choose another test set, the training set will also change accordingly. So as you can see, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to place greater relevance to the event that happened more recently in respect to the test set. So the rationale is, if Singapore Airlines offered $200 return airfare back in 2018, but that's not going to make me travel now. But if I get an email from Luxury Escape, offering me a great deal on the hotel package, well, I might actually think about traveling. Yep, you agree? Yes. So so that's the concept. So when you're trying to turn the concept into practice, it gets a bit trickier because you now have to quantify them. So anyone who's done the machine learning will probably appreciate that you need about 20 to 30 data points to train the model. And what we are doing here is the monthly forecasting. So 20 to 30 data points means you are going back 2 to 3 years. And that's a long time in the travel industry, right? So what I did was to actually test through the validation, what would be the optimal point where I can set the period of the training set so that I don't lose too many data points. At the same time, I capture the most recent event. But however, because it's 2 to 3 years, it's inevitable that some of the historical events will get into the training set and start to reduce the accuracy of the model. So how do I deal with that? I use the random forest. Random forest, in case you haven't heard of it, it's an ensemble of decision trees. That's probably the simplest explanation I can give. So when you create a tree, what you do is you go through the exhaustive searching of the variables that does the best split for the data point. And with the subset of the data, you go through the same process and split it again. It goes through the iterative process to create a tree. Now, what the random forest does is that it gives you control over which variables, not which variables, so it's a random sampled variables to use at the splitting point. So what it does is it has the effect of stabilizing the fluctuation of variable importance. Now, if you think about it, 2 to 3 years, travel industry, some of the behavior features might be important at a particular point of time, but they might be completely irrelevant at a different point of time. So by applying this MTRY parameter, I can have some way of stabilizing that effect. And to achieve this, what I found is the smaller value for MTRY provides the the better effect. But what this means is that you need to have a large number of variables and also the large number of trees. And also the other benefit of random forest is that when it creates a tree, it doesn't use every data. So it does the subsampling. And through this process, there's an implicit introduction of randomness. So I don't have to worry about the random factor. Well, I could, but I don't have to, right? Yeah. So the model now is the ensemble of multivariate nonlinear time series regression. That's what it came down to, yes. So when I deployed it, this was the performance. So the red line here is the prediction by the model, and the blue bar is the actual demand on a monthly level. I actually introduced the model at the start of 2018. So what you see on the left-hand side is the past date prior to 2018. So that becomes the validation point. And anything on the right-hand side is the actual evaluation of the actual forecasting. So in terms of the accuracy, before that. So what you see with the red line and blue bar is the validation outcome, the result, and the evaluation result. They're fairly consistent. And this is exactly what I look for when I deploy the model. So that means the model is stable enough to predict the future. So in terms of the accuracy, there were 50 data points, and the model achieved 90% accuracy in all of those data points. And in 94% of these data points, the model only showed 5% error. So at the time, the business expectation was that if the model can do 10% error for the majority of the data points, they were happy with it. So this is the finance, right? And as you can see, this model exceeded their expectation by far. So hence it became the official model. So thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you,
Right.
everyone, for the excellent talk. Question time. Any questions? On the room?
Ah,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, I think I heard the question. So I used the R programming language.
Just repeat it so that people might hear it.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So the question was what software I used. So I used the R programming language. Yeah, actually only used R language actually, right from the start to the end. The data was inside the SQL database, but I can run SQL command inside R. And all the training, validation, visualization was done through R. The evaluation side, I actually created a Shiny dashboard in R. And so I have a seamless continuity between the model training and the evaluation. Yes.